You're standing in line, nothing to do for 90 seconds. Your hand is already moving toward your pocket. You don't even decide to do it anymore. Red light, elevator, waiting room, same reflex every time. The bus is late, the kettle is boiling, the page is loading. Every gap in the day gets filled with the exact same motion. 90 seconds of nothing feels almost unbearable. You check the time, only 12 seconds have actually passed. The silence starts to feel like a problem you need to fix. Even lying in bed at 2 a.m., unable to sleep, the hand still reaches. Not for anything specific, just something. So the thumb starts moving before the brain even asks why. Modern life is engineered to remove every empty second you have. But that raises a much stranger question than it first seems. Phones are new, apps are newer, notifications are newer still. But 90 seconds of nothing, that is not new at all. So what did people do with empty time before anything existed to fill it? Not decades ago, not centuries ago. Tens of thousands of years ago, and the answer starts underground in a cave. Anthropologist Marshall Solins spent years studying hunter-gatherer societies. And he found something that broke a basic assumption everyone had about early humans. They weren't scrambling every waking hour just to stay alive. A few hours of hunting, a few hours of gathering, then nothing. Empty hours every single day for most of human history. Solins wasn't describing one lucky tribe. He was describing most of the human story. For nearly all of it, an idle mind wasn't rare. It was simply normal. Solins called it the original affluent society, rich not in things but in time. And it turns out an idle human mind does something very specific with that time. It starts looking for a pattern to hold onto. On the southern coast of South Africa, there's a cave called Blombos. Someone once sat at its mouth and picked up a small piece of ochre. Ochre was valuable, used for pigment, for tanning hides, for symbolic marking. But this piece wasn't used for any of that. Someone scratched a line into it, then another crossing the first. Then another, and another, a deliberate crosshatch pattern pressed in by hand. Not a tool, not food, not shelter, just a pattern. Archaeologist Christopher Henshelwood and his team uncovered that piece of ochre. Dated to roughly 77,000 years ago, the oldest deliberate drawing ever found. Think about what that actually means. No one needed that pattern to survive the night. It didn't feed anyone. It didn't warm anyone. Someone just had thousands of empty seconds and a mind that needed somewhere to put them. In the same region, researchers later found tiny shell beads, deliberately pierced and strung. Also with no survival purpose, just something made by hands with nothing else to do. The pattern wasn't decoration for someone else, it was for the person making it. A way of occupying a mind that would not simply sit in silence. And that restlessness didn't stay in one cave, on one coastline. It followed every human being who ever had a spare moment for the next 77,000 years. Which brings us somewhere much stranger than a cave. Walk through the ruins of Pompeii, and the walls are still talking. Preserved under volcanic ash since the year 79, the plaster still holds thousands of markings. Historians studying Pompeii's graffiti found tallies, doodles, jokes, and idle scratches everywhere. Etched by ordinary people, in doorways, in stairwells, in places where you simply waited. Not official inscriptions, not commissioned art, just marks left by a bored hand. Someone waiting for a friend, someone waiting for a shop to open. Reaching for a wall the same way you reach for a pocket. 2,000 years apart, same empty 90 seconds, same restless hand. Different tool, a blade instead of a screen. The urge itself never changed. It just kept traveling forward, generation after generation. Centuries later, In cold stone monasteries, monks copied manuscripts by candlelight for hours. It was slow, repetitive, exhausting work, and the mind wandered exactly where you'd expect. Historians who study medieval manuscripts have a name for what happened in the margins. They call it marginalia, doodles, strange creatures, tiny jokes drawn in the blank space. Snails fighting knights, rabbits with swords, faces peeking out from between the letters. None of it was requested. None of it was part of the text being copied. It was a tired hand, given one empty moment, doing what idle hands always do. The same crosshatch instinct from Blombo's cave, now dressed as a doodled rabbit in the margin. Different century, different tool, exactly the same restlessness. And it was about to meet its loudest century yet. Fast forward again. A trench somewhere in France, 1916. Battles came in short, violent bursts, between them, hours of waiting, sometimes days. And soldiers, without knowing it, reach for the same instinct their ancestors always had. They carved patterns into spent bullet casings, rings, matchbox covers, anything made of metal. Historians call it trench art. Thousands of pieces survive in museums today. Nobody ordered them to make it. There was no reward for finishing one. It didn't shorten the war by a single second. But the hands needed something to do while the mind sat there, waiting. A soldier turning a shell casing over and over is doing the same thing. As someone scratching lines into ochre 77,000 years earlier. Same restlessness, different tool, same exact reason. It wasn't decoration. It was a mind quietly managing itself. And decades later, scientists in a lab finally figured out why. In 2007, researcher Malia Mason and her team scanned brains during idle, empty moments. The brain doesn't switch off when it's bored. A whole network switches on instead. It's called the default mode network, and it activates the instant a task ends. Your mind wandering isn't nothing happening. It's a very specific, very active mode. In 2010, psychologist Jackie Andrade ran a simple experiment. She had people listen to a boring phone message. Half of them doodled while they listened. The doodlers remembered about 29% more information than the people who just sat still. The restless hand wasn't a distraction from paying attention. It was helping the mind hold on. Decades earlier, psychologist B.F. Skinner ran a very different experiment with pigeons. He found that rewards given on an unpredictable schedule created the strongest, most persistent behavior. Not a reward every time, a reward sometimes. That is what kept the pigeon pecking. Casino designers understood this instinctively long before Skinner ever explained it. Researcher Natasha Dow-Schull spent years studying slot machine design and the people who play them. She found machines engineered around that same unpredictable reward, keeping players in what she called the zone. Every notification on your phone runs on that exact same unpredictable schedule. You don't know if this refresh brings something interesting. That uncertainty is the entire mechanism. It's the pigeon's lever. It's the slot machine's handle. It's your thumb on the screen. The people who built these apps read the same research you just heard. They didn't stumble onto this by accident. They studied it on purpose. The ochre lines, the wall in Pompeii, the doodle in the margin, the carved shell casing. All the same tool, at different points on one very long timeline. Except one of these tools was built on purpose to never let the restlessness rest. It didn't invent your boredom. It just learned how to harvest it. Every scroll is a hand reaching for ochre that never runs out. And it works because the urge underneath it is 77,000 years old. Which is a strange thing to realize, standing in a checkout line. Because that's exactly where we started this video. 90 seconds, nothing to do, your thumb already moving. You didn't inherit an addiction out of nowhere. You inherited a mind that has never, not once, tolerated empty time. The phone didn't create that restlessness. It just became its newest home. Someone else felt this exact static in their hands, long before touchscreens existed. They picked up ochre, they scratched a wall, they doodled in a margin. They carved a bullet casing. You picked up glass and metal. Different centuries, same 90 seconds, same mind looking for somewhere to go. The difference isn't the feeling. The difference is who designed the object in your hand. Ochre didn't want anything from you. Neither did a monastery margin or a trench wall. Your phone does. It was built by people who studied exactly this instinct. And built something that never, ever lets it finish. None of this makes the phone evil. It just makes it very well designed. And understanding the mechanism is the first way to stop being quietly run by it. So next time your thumb moves before you decide to move it, pause for 1 second and notice what's actually happening underneath. That's not weakness. That's not a broken attention span. That's 77,000 years of an idle mind looking for a pattern. The healthiest thing you can do isn't to fight that instinct. It's to choose on purpose what you hand it. A pen, a page, a walk, a conversation, anything that's actually yours to finish. Instead of a feed that was built to make sure you never do. You're not failing at being present. You're just doing what humans have always done with an empty moment. You're not the first human to feel this way.